Welcome to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, addressing all aspects of the digital enterprise, inspiring connection without boundaries and creation without limits. Thank you for tuning in. Here are your hosts, Thom Singer and Craig Brown.
This is the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. This podcast addresses strategies to enable enterprise transformers and decision makers to understand how digital tools and techniques deliver superior results in the global competitive marketplace. My name is Thom Singer, and I have the honor to co-host this show every single week with Craig Brown. Craig is an industry veteran and former PLM leader at General Motors. Craig continues to serve the community of PLM as an advisor and a mentor. Hey, Craig, how are you today?
I'm great, Tom. It's good to hear you. It's good to be doing this again. Today's guest is well known by the whole community, so we'll get to that in a second.
Yep, we've got Adam Specht with us, and he is the president of the board for the Digital Enterprise Society. And today we're going to talk about the Digital Enterprise Society live and in-person event on November 17th in Detroit called the Digital Intersect. So, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Craig.
So we are really excited
Adam,
about.
How did we decide to go physical? Because I just spent 3 days listening to a virtual conference. These guys are quite talented here in Detroit. I won't name them, but they struggled a lot and they decided to remain virtual. I myself have been to several physical conferences, and frankly, I prefer that. I want to get back to seeing you guys face to face. So I'm kind of curious. How did you guys? On the leadership board of the Digital Enterprise Society decide to do it face-to-face?
Well, it's a similar journey that you talked about, right? So I've done a couple of virtual conferences over the past couple of years. And while the content was good, it was very much one direction. Mm-hmm. And what we think this really needs to be is something that is more of a bi-directional communication, right? When we talk about the challenges that all of us are facing, right? The new reality of people working remotely. I mean, this is my basement. This is where engineers are now designing automobiles, right? It's kind of nice, but it's also kind of challenging. So how do we work together and how do we come up with a plan and exchange ideas to overcome those challenges? You can't do that with a one-directional conversation. You really need to be able to get together with your peers. You need to get together with experts in the industry and really talk through this stuff and say, all right, how are you guys dealing with this? I have the ways that I've been doing it, and it's lots of Teams meetings, lots of Zoom meetings, but how do we exchange data? How do we whiteboard ideas? How do you do this kind of stuff? So we decided that there's a lot of value in having an offsite in person, where people can talk about things like all of these challenges we're facing today.
So Adam, I want to jump in on that because, I've been to a whole bunch of events the last few months, and I will tell you that people are really glad to be there. And while we do think that all of these virtual events, they have served their purpose well, and they're going to continue. A lot of groups will continue to do in person. Some will do fully virtual. Some will do hybrid. However, everybody kind of agrees that getting together, there's that serendipity of those hallway conversations of people you get to talk to as you walk out, or the chance to, cross paths with the speaker when you go to the bar after happy hour or something like that. And this is true both for live events like we're going to do on November 17th, but it's also true when we think about, are we working remotely? Are we, occasionally bringing the team together? I have a young friend who is a quantitative researcher for a hedge fund. And he's an introvert. He's a math genius. However, he likes going into the office 3 or 4 days a week because he says he gets more done. He says it's that ability to walk into a coder or another quant and to be able to say, hey, I'm having trouble with this. And then they brainstorm it and they solve the problem and they're able to move forward. He said during the pandemic and the lockdown, you had to schedule something on Slack and set up a Teams meeting and then share your screen. And it was just clunkier. There's something about the serendipity of bringing people together. It's where the magic happens. So I'm excited that we're doing this live and in person.
Yeah. One more artifact about all this is, I think when we went into the office, we mentally got prepared, and I really believe this. As I've done the remote working since retirement and then the pandemic, part of the problem is you're not sure if the person you're trying to connect with virtually is really in the game yet. Maybe they're having a bad day. The coffee hasn't kicked in. At least for me, that 40-minute commute, as much as I hated it, it in fact gave me that time to, get the brain in gear for the day, whatever the day's challenges were. So part of it is we'll be, in a sense, more focused if we get together face to face. And I think that's another part of it. Now, you could blame the individual on, learning new work habits. I suppose that's true, right? But I don't know. The other thing we're going to talk about is, I'm glad to see you're still here, right?
Right. And Craig,
in my age group, there's some folks that aren't with us anymore, and it's kind of sad. And part of it was COVID, and part of it's just the passage of 3 years, right?
Right. And to your point, Craig, there are challenges of working as a team remotely, which is actually one of the tracks that we brought into this conference just for that purpose. How do you build a winning team culture when people are working from their basements or their offices at home or wherever, right? Mm-hmm. The new reality is that we are a globally distributed workforce. I have teammates in Belgium. I have teammates that live in Florida. I have teammates that live in Chicago. I'm based in the Detroit area. How do you effectively work together, right? It's not just the technical solutions of how do I design a product, but how, as a manager of people, do I build a team that is effective in doing their jobs? Because you're right. When I come down the stairs into my basement, I mentally separate my family life from my work life. I've trained myself to do that over the past 2 years. And I can tell you, it was something I was really bad at before the pandemic hit. I didn't think I'd ever be able to work from home, so I never did. I've trained myself to do that. But how can we do that effectively as a team? How can you have this stuff, right? And how can you do this stuff and really have it be beneficial, right? And to be able to figure that out, I want to talk about it in person. I want to learn from people that are doing it.
Well, and the thing I'd like to add too is, we talk a lot on the show and we've done a lot of career development episodes where we've talked to people about how do you grow your career. I interviewed Craig a few episodes back where we actually talked about why do you get involved with an organization like the Digital Enterprise Society? Why would you attend conferences that are put on by manufacturers or other industry groups? And, the consensus is that when you get together and you share experiences, that's how you build relationships. And for people who are maybe younger in this business and they're thinking ahead 5 years, 10 years, 15 years of a career working around these digital manufacturing tools, it's one thing to attend events like this in your basement and watch it. And wow, that was really good. But when you're done, you turn off the conference and you either go back to work or you go upstairs, to dinner with your kids or whatever. You're not having those conversations with other people. And from the 3.5 years I've spent hosting this show with Craig, we've interviewed a lot of people, Craig, that you have had long-term, because you're old, long-term friendships with, in the industry of people you met at roundtables, at conferences, on boards that you served on. And those things developed into being able to collaborate between companies, being able to do that. And the secret to this is what leads to new job opportunities for people who are thinking, where do I go next? If you're in your basement, nobody knows who you are. If you're attending things in the industry over time, it doesn't happen from going to a one-day conference. But over the course of a career, people start to know that you're an expert, that you're somebody who can contribute, and all of a sudden, you're the person that they're hiring when they have a great opportunity. So I want everybody to remember, it's not just, a conference and I go. It's who am I meeting that I can develop those long-term and mutually beneficial relationships with, because that's where that serendipity of career opportunities will really come from over a lifetime.
So I was looking at the agenda and Adam, I want you to go over it in a second, but I noticed a gentleman named Nan Kokar is there. And Nan and I, as an example, Thom, we interacted. Actually, it was an LMS Imagine conference a long time ago, probably 15 years ago now. And he was at Ford and I was at General Motors Powertrain, and we were kind of doing the same thing at our two different companies. And here we are all these years later. I'm a couple years older, so I've retired. And Nan is now the automotive strategist for Siemens after a long career at Ford. So it's kind of interesting that we will still keep coming back. And I think we will have some to share with each other while we're at the conference, including just confirming that we're both still breathing. So I can't emphasize enough the changes. It's been 3 long years with the pandemic, and I'm really happy, Adam, that you guys decided to have an in-person event. I think they're needed. Maybe with that, give us a bit of the overview, and then fill us in on some of the administrative stuff. So I see there's this futurist. Can you tell us a bit about him and why we'd want to listen?
Yeah, so our futurist, he's our keynote speaker, Simon Anderson. We're bringing him in to really kind of give a forward-looking, predictive, crystal ball type view of the future. And the goal is for him to be able to kind of set the tone for the day and help establish a little bit of a mindset of saying, okay, where can we take things? Where are they going? Mm-hmm. From there, we're going to transition into a talk by Peter Bolello, who, again, many of us have known for many years. He is going to give a little bit of a state of the industry. So current state, where are things at? How are things going right now? And then from there, we're going to break up and we're going to talk about some of the challenges that we are dealing with, right? So the goal is to say, here's kind of the future, here's where we're at. Let's talk about our problems a little bit in terms of collaborative design. How do we do this effectively? We're going to talk about digital threads in a vendor agnostic environment, right? So you have General Motors, you have Ford, you have Daimler, et cetera, right? And they can say, I'm going to use these guys' tools. This is the standard. Right. Well, I'm a tier 1. I have to deal with all of them. So how do I achieve a connected system and have connected data that is actually usable given all this disparity in systems, right? That, especially paired with the challenges of the collaborative design, I think is a really interesting thing to talk about. And then
and another emerging thing in that whole area is all the field data we're getting back. So in this world of where we've all worked remotely, we figured out how to communicate a lot of data better, right? And the data from the field is a part of this digital thread. We tend to talk about design efficiency and the handoff between a tier 1 and the OEM, but we're both learning from field data that's coming back faster and faster. And so the digital thread, I've spent a bit of time writing and talking with people about, and it's across the whole life cycle. And I know Peter really well. He will stress this, the complete life cycle. That's one of the trends, way beyond design. And then part of the work SimData did and the research that they have been presenting this year is on sustainability. And I'm pretty sure he'll touch on that as well. Well, what does that mean all to us? Well, as we worked remotely, it became more and more apparent that we used energy in different ways. And that's a good thing in parts of the world because the energy's a lot more expensive. But also just that the whole balance equation of sustainability is changing. I saw a fascinating thing earlier this week. What's the highest consumer of electricity in your daily life? And all of a sudden, it's the data analytics you cause as a result of your web viewing. And who would have ever thought that would be more than your vehicle that you use because you're not using your vehicle, you're staying at home. So it's just an amazing awareness of energy consumed to do all this pattern matching with computers is actually now on par with the energy consumed to drive your car to your office. Right. So it just... We as consumers and we as engineers are becoming more aware of the sustainability equation, and a digital thread, including its whole life cycle, will only make that better. And so I think it's a fascinating time to be an engineer. I wish I still was in some regards. It's not just lightweighting and it's not just electric vehicles, but it's a much broader discussion.
Right.
It occurs to me, should we be changing the name from digital enterprise to digital ecosystem? I'm maybe playing with words, but the point that we need to talk a little bit also about is how you get a winning team culture. Well, we're in this digital universe. The people at Facebook call it meta now, right? We can get a lot done working the way we're working. And so, how do you get to that winning team culture at the same time? I'm glad you've got it on the agenda. I'm kind of curious how the discussions are going to go.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to really dig into. And the way that we're positioning it is, I think, going to be beneficial to everyone. And that we're going to start out the topic having a presentation, and then we're going to transition into more of a round table discussion, right? So, and what that'll allow us to do is have more interaction in the room. We don't want this to just to be one way. We want people to share ideas, be able to toss out their problems of the day, and really work together to potentially arrive at some solutions.
Great. So any highlights you want us to be aware of? I mentioned Nand. I know him pretty well, though we haven't stayed in touch. Are there other participants that you'd like to note?
We're working on them. We have just yesterday gotten commitment from another vendor that is going to be talking about the digital thread. And the way they positioned it, they are not necessarily a player as a Siemens or a Dassault or one of the big pillars of the digital tool set, right? They will help us really talk about how to manage things in a mixed tool set environment. So we'll be posting their name as soon as everything is finalized with the agreements and whatnot. But they did sign up just yesterday. So we actually have an agenda that I think is pretty compelling. We are looking for additional speakers. So if folks that are listening to this are interested in talking about these topics, we'd encourage them to contact us and let us know. It's going to be a good agenda.
So is the format the whole day will take place in one room? Will there be breakout sessions? What's the flow of the day?
Yep, there will be breakout sessions. So we start out together, and then we have the 3 different tracks. So we'll have collaborative design, digital thread, and then winning team culture. We'll have lunch. And then after lunch, we're going to have presentations from some of the larger vendors to talk about, okay, this is how we solve the problems, and this is how we position our solutions to help you with the challenges that you were talking about in the morning, right? So we do have Siemens plan to talk about that, and we're working on a couple other ones that we've been in contact with.
And Madam, fill us in. Where and when, and do people need to register and things like that?
Yes. So the location is the Troy Marriott in Troy, Michigan. It is November 17th, which is a Thursday. So hopefully that works out for everybody. If you Google the Digital Intersect, you will arrive at our page. You can also go to digitalenterprisesociety.org. and you'll find it there on our events page as well. And if this is posted on YouTube, we will have a link down below.
So I want to talk a minute about coming back to events. This probably won't be the first live event for most people who attend, but for a lot of people, they've only been to 1 or 2 since the pandemic has kind of waned itself to where we are now. So as people are thinking of, should I attend? Like, what's the benefit? We talked a little bit about, the serendipity and long-term career benefits. But when people are coming, what are some tips that you have to maximize attending a live conference like this in the industry? And I have some I'll share after you go.
Yeah, so the way that this is structured, with the roundtable discussions, with longer breaks in between the sessions, I really encourage people to take that first step. It might feel uncomfortable to speak up and open your mouth, but you'll be amazed at the feedback that you will get. You're definitely not the only person in the room that's afraid to raise your hand and say something. I can tell you, when I was the first young kid going, before I got all the gray hair, I didn't know if I should speak up, but when I did, people were very welcoming in this community. They're all willing to share ideas. And I think that the best thing you can do is just open your mouth, share your ideas, share your thoughts, and be open to, a conversation. You'll be, I think, amazed at how that starts out.
Yeah, in my experience, so at the SimData team, they held a conference in late March, which was pretty early compared to many others. And it was awkward. We weren't sure if we should shake hands. We weren't sure if we should
fist bump distance.
Yeah. Masks were optional at that point. And so my recommendation to everybody, so I've been to a few, and I also got got sent over to Korea for one back in early July. My advice to everybody is, well, everybody's respectful. We're where we are at regarding the pandemic. And so if you think you need a mask because you feel safer, then bring one. But realize that other people will respect that. And there's fewer handshakes, frankly, which is kind of sad, but that's kind of just where we're at. And then if somebody's uncomfortable and you can sense that just looking at body language, well, then back off and give them some space. It's just where we're at. That facility, the one that you mentioned where the event is, I've been to several events there, and other people that have come to the old, we called them the regional users group meetings in my day. It can be quite crowded, but don't let that deter you. Show up anyways, show up early, sit over in the corner. My first event after the pandemic started, I did exactly that. I found the far right corner or the far left corner up front where people typically don't go. And I did that same thing in March. And so I think people just, as you said, reach out, speak up, but also just come. You'll be fine. And practice whatever safety guidelines you need to practice to feel as comfortable as possible. The benefit you'll get from the social interaction and the realizing you're not alone in this is huge compared to the risks involved. And, many people are vaccinated. I think that's a good thing. And so, hopefully, you can manage that on your own, right? People are respectful. People are anxious to see each other, and people are cautious. Don't be offended if somebody's cautious toward you. It's just where we're at as a society.
So I speak and serve as the master of ceremonies at a lot of technology-related events. And along with that, you end up with a lot of people who self-identify as more to the introverted side of things. And so oftentimes when people come to an event like this, they come in thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know anybody. Everybody here, they've been friends for years. Well, the advice I give is that's not true. Most of the people there only know one or two people. And so when you come in, realize that if you're overwhelmed by a big crowd, by big numbers of people, because it makes you just a little uncomfortable. You like it a little more small. Remember, you don't have to meet hundreds of people. And when you're talking to people, most introverts tell me they love a conversation one-on-one. It's just they don't want 1 to 400. Well, what you do when you come to an event like this is remember that whoever's in your little conversation cluster, and those are when we all kind of are at the happy hours or during breaks, people stand in groups of 2, 3, and 4. You rarely see a circle of 8, 10, 12, 15 people. And so remember, I only have to worry about the 1 or 2 people that I'm talking to at this exact moment. And every time we go on break, kind of push yourself a little bit, maybe just a little bit out of your comfort zone and say, I'm going to meet one person who I've never met before on this break. And this is a friendly crowd. I've been around this crowd many, many times in past iterations. If you walk up to somebody and just say, hey, I don't know anybody here. Hi, my name's, Mary. They'll be so friendly to you. They'll be very welcoming. And if you do that at every single break or every meal, go in, sit down at a table and just say, hey, I don't know you guys, but we're supposed to network while we're here. People will be very welcoming. And you'll find out if you do that every time throughout the day, you'll meet 5 or 6 people. And not everybody are you going to have that super click with that you're going to want to follow up with them. But if you walk away from the day with 1 or 2 people who you're like, wow, I should really follow up with Adam, or I should follow up with Craig. And then you schedule a phone call or a Zoom call, and then you see them at the next event 6 months later or a year later. All of a sudden, that's how you build those relationships. So don't get overwhelmed by how many people are going to be there. Realize that you're only meeting one person at a time. So it really doesn't matter.
Right.
So Adam, I'm thinking about the evolution of our group, the Digital Enterprise Society, and I remember as we chartered it at the end of PLM World, we were focused on medium and small manufacturers. We thought to some degree they were underserved by what we were doing, and this is to everybody's remember. This is 5 or 7 years ago, right? So. Is the focus of the Digital Enterprise Society changed? And I thought maybe this would be a good way to close. And you give us from the leadership's point of view, what is our focus and how do you see that evolving in the future?
Yeah, it really has. I wouldn't say we're limited to small and medium anything. The goal really is to share information and best practices regarding the modern digital enterprise, right? Manufacturing, design, and really the flow of information within that ecosystem.
Yeah, and if it hadn't been for what we've been doing the last 2 decades, this remote working thing actually wouldn't have worked. Yeah, right.
I would
especially
love,
for engineering. Anyways.
Exactly. I would love to see somebody design products without any sort of PLM system or data management system. If you tried to do what we used to do 20 years ago with the tools we had then, good luck.
Right. I couldn't agree more. Well, Thom, anything else?
No, but I encourage everybody, if you're listening to this and you've been with us for the last 25 minutes, I encourage you to make plans right now for November 17th to make sure you're at the Digital Intersect, hosted by the Digital Enterprise Society, because this is going to be a great event. It's going to be a great chance to meet a bunch of people. You'll get to meet Craig and I in person if you're a regular listener of the show. We'll be there. We'll be doing some interviews live on site for future editions of the podcast. And so make sure that you're making plans now to be there.
Excellent.
I'm looking forward to it. Hope you guys are too.
Awesome. And thank you to everybody who listens to this show. You know what? If you want to learn more about anything that you hear on the Digital Enterprise Society podcast, jump over to digitalenterprisesociety.org. And we encourage you to leave a comment on the show notes or wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a comment about why you liked this podcast. We'd like to see that. And make sure that you join us again for our next discussion about organizational transformation through the use of digital tools and techniques. Join us here every week for more thoughts, ideas, and actionable information to help you navigate your career.
You've been listening to the Digital Enterprise Society podcast. Learn more about what you've heard here today at digitalenterprisesociety.org. Join us again next week for more connection without boundaries and creation without limits.